Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Gerardo Poli.
And this, oh, sorry. Okay.
One of the best bits of advice I've ever received was to find good mentors and to learn from them. Trusted people who have already done what you're trying to do now. I've been fortunate throughout my career to have some fantastic mentors to help guide me, but I realized that they'd be hard to find and also hard to commit the time to one. This is why we've gathered some of the best minds from the veterinary world and squeezed them for their wisdom so that you don't have to learn the hard way.
With the help of our guests, we flip the veterinary profession on its back and explore its soft underbelly to find the tips, tools, and inspiration that you'll need to build the career that you've always wanted.
I'm Gerardo Poli.
I'm Hubert Hemstra, and this is the Vet Vault. In today's episode, we chat to a vet who, in her relatively short career, has managed to encourage and inspire tens of thousands of vets and wannabe vets through a popular veterinary Instagram account, Louisa_the_vet. And after our interview, I can count myself as one of the many people who have benefited from her infectious enthusiasm.
Dr. Louisa Graham is a UK-based small animal veterinarian. Because of her childhood that she describes as surrounded by animals, she always knew that she could only ever be a vet. Since qualifying, she has worked in small animal practices across the UK as both practitioner and in managerial and mentor roles. She has continued her education while working, gaining a certificate in advanced veterinary medicine in small animal medicine after a few years in practice.
We cover a lot of ground in our conversation with Louisa, discussing topics like how she stays motivated, the struggles she faced during her early career, why a good support network is so important, and what that network looks like, especially in your first job. And on the topic of first jobs, we talk about finding that right first job and what your future employers care and don't care about. Louisa gives us advice about managing your expectations, becoming a mini specialist, avoiding what she calls the comparison trap, maintaining perspective, and most importantly, having fun.
I think that's enough from us. Please enjoy this conversation with the effervescent and all-around lovely Dr. Louisa Graham. And when you get to the end, keep listening for our surprise bonus section. Hi, Louisa.
Hi everybody.
Good morning, Louisa.
And also Hubert. Here he is.
Hi,
for those who don't know Louisa, she is an Instagram famous vet with 13,500 followers. And one of the things that actually drew me to following Louisa on Instagram was the fact that her cases. If you follow me on Instagram, you probably like posting clinical cases, which provide tips and hints and tips and sort of insight on how to tackle those difficult things. And Louisa's Instagram is full of those insightful cases which can add perspective and help you get through those things if you see them in practice. And it was through an Instagram story that actually we connected, maybe almost a year ago now. And since then, we've had several chats back and forward around cases, and it's led to discussions on other aspects. And then it was through these discussions where I felt that you'd be an awesome candidate to have a chat to on this podcast, as I can see that you've gone through quite a lot through your career. And also is passionate about your career and also sharing that with other people around the world. So again, thank you for coming on. And yeah, did you have anything you want to say?
Thank you. That's such a lovely introduction. No, thank you very much. I think I mean it's been great. We've obviously connected over Instagram, which seems so far away from how you think you'd communicate with people in the veterinary world, and it's been great. We've shared cases. I've absolutely loved putting all my cases on, just because I think I love being able to show new vets or older vets or whoever just what we see in general practice, that it's not all amazing, it's not all sad, it's not all bad, it's actually really fun if you make it. And I just think this whole social networking that we've got now has just completely revolutionized the veterinary profession and the veterinary world and how we can communicate with each other. So I think it's fab. And thank you so much for inviting me to speak to you both. Very honoured.
It's absolute pleasure. I'm thrilled as well to have you on. Now I'm going to kick off with the first question. So there's about according to Instagram about 13,000 people out there who know what you look like and they know what you do on your day-to-day life, but they don't know much else about you. And I'm pretty sure they'd love to know what makes Louisa tick and what she's all about. So in the preparation for this interview, you alluded to a story that I think could go a long way towards explaining what you're about. Could you please tell us about how you wanted to rescue a dog when you were a youngster? And if I can give you clues to the story, let's just say breaking and entering.
Like when I think about this now, I'm quite like a bolshy sort of person, but it did much younger. But so I think when you speak to a lot of vets, they normally have some sort of story that solidifies what they want to be. Also, I probably was just a bit gobby and a bit of an attitude problem. You know, should have had an ASBO. But I really have ASBO.
I know that.
But yeah, essentially, it was at my family's house, and I remember being on my computer. I don't know what I was doing, probably on like MSN Messenger or something ridiculous. And I remember this little black poodle cross that was it was screaming, and it was dragging its legs across the main road. So my house overlooked the main road. We had a big driveway. And I knew this dog because it was always running around like an absolute lunatic. And we knew the people that owned it. And we knew that they just kind of let the dog run around. And then so I knew where it lived. So I ran out to this dog and tried to bite me, obviously. So I chucked my coat on it. I was like, you little bugger. And I picked it up and I ran. At the time, it seemed really far, but I don't know, it's probably like 100 yards or something ridiculous. Knocked on the door and went to the owners and said, look, I think your dog's been run over or something at the time. I don't know. It's a young teenager. Like, it needs to go to the vets now. And they were like, yeah, fine. Just put it on the sofa. So I kind of walked in the house. I remember there was just like pizza boxes all over the floor. And put it on the sofa, came home and spoke to my dad. My dad, bear in mind, who is like a head teacher at the time of 2 huge sixth form colleges, a governor, really well known in the area. So I came home and I was like, Dad, I'm really upset. This is what's happened. And I can't really remember whether he said I could or not. But anyway, I was so upset. I ran back to the house and I just walked into the house and this dog was still on the sofa shaking. And I just said, look, I'm just going to take your dog. So yeah, went in, took the dog, and took it back to my dad's house, my parents' house. He got us in the car. We drove to the vets, and I obviously dropped the dog off. And it's only when you're older that you realise, but I didn't hear anything else about the dog, and I never saw the dog again. But when I phoned the practice, she was basically saying that they couldn't give me any information, but I never saw the dog. But what she did say was that it had been, she thinks it had been shot by an air rifle. So.
Oh,
yeah,
so
at the time I was really mad and really sad that they hadn't taken it to the vets, and I was really angry at the vets for like, why can't you just tell me what happened and why can't I pay for it? Sort of like my family helped, and it's now that you realise actually it's not for them to just give out information. So and I remember thinking, right, not having that. That's me. I'm going to vet school. That's
so
me.
do you think that was the decider? That was the
I would say that's the one thing that I remember, and it was the final push. I was brought up with dogs all my life, so I always knew that I wanted to work with them. But I remember thinking, yeah, that's me. I'm gonna be that person at the other end. My mum loves that story. She absolutely loves it.
It does say a lot, doesn't it? It does. I think it paints a good picture.
Well, good in the way that it's for the animals. Probably don't break into houses.
Yeah,
it demonstrates, I suppose, like just really standing for something that you believe in, and also just that's bravery and courage there.
Yeah, it was. I was proud of myself for doing it, although at the time probably thought before I actually should have maybe spoken to someone about it. But yeah, it was what I needed to do, and the dog got somewhere. So
That's absolutely. And is it? Do you think it's that primary desire to do to do what's best for an animal that still keeps you going? Is that what motivates you?
yeah, and I think we get a lot of Jared probably gets the same. We get a lot of questions about like, how do you keep motivated, like, you know, and it's not all about, oh, I'll go to the gym and this. It's actually like Jared and I had a discussion about a case of the day, and it's cases seeing animals and not feeling that you're doing as much as you could do for them, or seeing them suffering and you think, right, and no, I'm going to get better at that, and I'm going to do this. And I think seeing the patients, seeing the animals and the owners, that's what motivates me to keep going and be better. Yeah, the actual animals.
Mm,
It's
absolutely.
a really powerful source of motivation that you just talked about. It's like an internal drive to really overcome challenges and things and just improve yourself. And I totally agree with what you said there. That and I believe that having that motivation come from such a pure source, and from a desire to help is like, I think it's critical. I think that's critical. And would you, I suppose, agree that that's critical for a long term sort of success and, how would you say, continued improvement in this career or personal improvement?
Yeah, I think it's, if I split it up, like it's personal improvement because I will know that there are cases every day where I'll feel I was a bit weaker at that aspect of it, and that will make me think, right, well, I may not have been able to address that as much as I would have done, so I'm going to get better at that area. And that's where we then choose CPD, or we'll go on courses, or we'll read books about it. So I think for personal development, but also for, you know, bettering for the animals as well. So I think it works both ways. And I think it's really important for my career to keep learning and keep going, and the animals are the reason I do it. And the more sick they get, or the more injuries or illnesses I see, then that'll keep me going, keep me ticking over, because not one case is the same. The last 2 days has shown me that not one case is the same, regardless of what you think you know.
Yeah, I think it's also important to keep that in mind. Why you're doing it on those days where you are overstretched and exhausted, and it can
Absolutely.
be easy to start thinking, why the hell am I doing this to myself? And
Absolutely, yeah.
to have that in the back of your head to go, oh yeah, that's why. It's
Mm.
there's a very good reason that I'm putting myself through stuff that sometimes can be very challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Louisa, you shared to us. Oh, sorry, Louisa, you shared with us that your first job was in Lancashire, and
Yep.
is that how you say it? Lancashire.
Yeah, Lancashire. Yeah,
Oh,
Lancashire.
damn.
Depends how
Winner.
northern you are. Lancashire. You said Lancashire. Lancashire.
Lancashire. So yeah,
Lancashire.
so you shared with us that your first job was in Lancashire, and in a small amount of practice. But then, kind of, it seemed like as if, well, the impression I got was that it was quite a varied first job
Yeah.
involving not just, general practice work, but after hours as well. What was
Yeah.
that like as a new graduate, kind of going into those into that environment?
Yeah. So I qualified, I think, on Friday and started work on a Monday.
Oh, okay. Yep.
I was one of those.
You needed to pay.
Uh,
You needed
I
your
didn't
car. You needed to work now.
really didn't. I was like, oh my God, I have no money.
Yeah.
So it was, I'll be honest, extremely stressful. I was lucky in my first 6 months. I did have a really lovely senior vet that was actually a stand-in for someone, but she was really helpful. But I was lucky in terms of my general practice. I actually felt relatively confident with what I knew. I knew that I was going to see loads of new things every day, but like consulting wise, that wasn't what got me, because I spent a lot of time with my university. They prepared us for consultation. So they put us in, we had clinical rotation. So we didn't have a
Mm.
hospital where we stayed and
Hmm.
in one place. We went to multiple different practices. So we were put in, I don't know whether you guys are familiar with them, but like the RSPCA and the
Mm.
PDSA and the charity. So we were put in there and we were made to do consultations and things. So that sort of side I enjoyed, and I just enjoyed seeing new things. The out of hours was terrifying. We had, going back quite a long time, we had backup to begin with. At the time when I started, the hospital wasn't as busy as what it got. It got silly. We did have a backup that would come in if we needed them, but that stopped after 6 months. And you can imagine within 6 months of doing maybe one night in 8, you're still an absolute juvenile, like, and it was really, really, really stressful. And it was more stressful because of the hours. If anything, it was do all day, you do all night for the weekend. And I remember just crumbling and crying because it was so stressful and having like 70 patients, and it got too much. And that's, as time went on, as I got a bit more senior in the practice, that's when we started to implement changes, because I was one of a group of people that stayed, and I think there must have been about 10 people that left before I did. And we put into practice having like a mentor scheme. So when I was obviously confident being out of hours, I would come off the rota, we would have a new vet that went on, and we would be their backup. They would contact us for phone advice, we'd be in there, so they weren't left alone. And it was really intimidating, but in hindsight, I think that made me more confident quicker. But that might be because of my personality, whereas I think those that are a bit more vulnerable to, the dynamics of being a vet, the stresses and the losses and whatever, would really affect somebody. And it did. We lost a lot of vets through their they'd leave. But out of hours, I'll be honest, it was absolute nightmare. It was a nightmare.
I agree with you. I did out of hours on call for 10 plus years, and that was I wanted to get out of veterinary science because of it. I just never found that out. I think I would have bailed if I could have. It's torture.
And I don't know whether it's the same with yourselves, but we now are struggling to find vets that will go to a job that does out of hours. Now, whether that's because they want the like a bit of an easier role, whether it's because they not necessarily want an easier role, they want a role that might be less stressful for them, they're looking at their health, or they've heard horror stories. We are struggling to find vets that will do the night roles, and in which case there are practices in my area, huge practices, that are stopping doing their own out of hours for their vets, to keep their vets, to look after them, and they're sourcing them to the big out of hours companies where I'm going to be working for. And so I don't know whether you guys see that as well, but less vets are wanting to do out of hours now.
Definitely. Within my little sphere of Brisbane, there's been a big shift in terms of the number of practices that would offer after hours. Some are trying to shift back to doing later hours, like closing at 9 o'clock rather than 6 o'clock. But even then, veterinarians are still hesitant with that, and not very many people take that on. I do believe that, when you're talking about self-improvement before and desire to improve so you can be a better vet for your patients, and also, for yourself too, like that in a sense is a growth mindset there. And I think when you're talking about, why some people may not want to take on that kind of position, take on those challenges, I think it does come down to mindset and seeing things as a challenge where they can improve upon, as opposed to something that's overwhelming and not even wanting to step in that direction. But like I was reading an article about what new graduate students want. They did a big survey of students in the US, and they talked about work-life balance being one. Not necessarily money, but work-life balance. Positive team environment, but mentorship was a big one. So I'm quite interested to know. So like we have a mentorship program at a hospital, which is quite extensive, and it's taken about 5 years to develop. But it doesn't necessarily have to be extensive. But how did you start in terms of, I suppose this is a question for practices or practice owners, or even experienced clinicians who have always thought about developing a mentorship program. What advice would you have for them if, like, given that you were one of the people who started it within that hospital?
So I think because I'm in the generation where I'm like the middle type of vet. You'll get like the newbies, the really, really established ones that have been there 20 years, and then the in-betweeny ones. So I would say to people that you have to look after these vets. You don't necessarily have, like, I think these mentor schemes and these internships are great. So we've got a lovely guy at the practice I'm locoming at the moment, and he's on one, and I think he feels a little bit frustrated sometimes because he feels like he's being held back, but equally he's getting this structure where he's learning to walk before he can run, which I think is good. And the mentor scheme that myself and some of the other vets, we just loved it. It wasn't like we were babysitting them, but it meant that they could have somebody to come to just to discuss a case, or just to phone for a chat out of hours, and just to have somebody there just to feed them a little bit, or just to help them a little bit, but actually to give them the confidence that they can say, no, come on, what do you think about this? What would your differentials and things be? But I do think for a practice, I mean, I'm not a practice owner, but if I was one and I was taking on a newly qualified, I would have to be able to put the time in, or have staff where we could mentor them. Otherwise, I just think being left alone could be potentially disastrous for some people, not only the patients, but for the vets, because it only takes one bad bitch spay and confidence is gone. We've got, I know a vet, she's a lovely vet, and she'll never, ever, ever, she's brilliant operating, but she will never do a bitch spay ever again because of something that happened in the first few years of her being a vet.
And then she didn't have the support to help her get herself.
Didn't have the support. And I think a lot of vets, again, this goes back to, being a business owner. It's easy for me to say I love helping people, but if I was a business owner, would I have the time to invest or spend, buddying up with somebody all the time? I think to take on somebody new, you've got to be able to look after them. Otherwise, you shouldn't take them on.
Yeah, I think that's the key there.
So just to sort of summarize or reflect back upon what you said there. So it's not necessarily having this big structure in place where, there's a formal training program, but it can even start with something as simple as having one person that person feels safe talking to, that they know that they can call for advice, and sometimes like perspective. It's perspective on a case. It's even perspective on, their actions or their influence on the outcome. Did I really do this? I gave this drug and this dog died. Was that me? And sometimes it's like, hey, look, that drug is very safe. It's really unlikely that you would ever have resulted in that outcome there. But perspective to stop that whole cycle of thought.
Yeah.
Yep.
The other thing you mentioned. Sorry, the other thing that you mentioned there is actually asking questions, and I think that's a really powerful thing that a mentor can do, because we often think that mentors have to tell, but I think through questioning and through questioning, what actually happens is you are teaching them how to think.
Yeah.
If you teach them how to think, then what happens is then they can continue to do that after. If you just provide them with answers, it gets them out of a tight spot, but they don't learn. So,
and that's it. That's the thing. So I came from sort of the mentor scheme that didn't really have a structure. It was just, so we do in-house CPD, we'd alternate it every month or so. So we'd get everybody in and we'd talk about a case. So we'd all find an exciting case that we'd seen and we'd talk through it. And then when we were a mentor, you'd basically buddy up with somebody. Essentially, you'd have somebody that could just phone you. And I think it's nice because you are their friend as well. So you can have a bit of an informal chat about it. And they can just have that peace of mind. And it was mainly for them being out on call as well, because it just took the edge off feeling alone. But equally, these practices that have the actual internship schemes, I think they're really great. And I think particularly if you're preparing a student or a vet for going out of hours, for example, I would say, well, I would like you to have done this many cat spays and that many bitch spays and this, and things like that. I don't know how your internships things work, but that's how the ones I've seen are here. You do this many consults, you get confident with the boosters, and then you put you in the urine infection skin, and then you put you in the vomiting and diarrhea, and then they put you with the dyspneic cat. So it's kind of easing them in, and I think they're great. I think it works both ways, and I guess it depends on the practice and what staff you've got, and I don't know, finances, because if you're on an internship program, you have to pay them for that as well, I guess.
Oh, I'll tell you what, yeah, ours costs somewhere around about $20,000 to $25,000 per person.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
but we would invest in that, and we do invest in that because this is their first step into their profession. Definitely. And their first experience would guide and influence their impression of this profession for future, and how long they stay in here, how they handle and manage stress, how they think and approach cases. So,
and I think that's exactly your first job. I cannot stress enough how important your first job is for your shaping your future career and what you think of this profession. That you've hit the nail on the head there.
Absolutely. Louisa, in your role as a mentor, or even as for your own first job, were there things that surprised you at how challenging it was? And I'm not talking specifically clinically. It could be non-clinical things. Were there things that you didn't consider as a potential problem that then you really struggled with or really challenged you, or do you find that in some of the people you mentor that they worry about some things, but then there's things they don't worry about that blindsides them?
I think it depends who you're mentoring. So there are some that, I don't know, I think the things that I struggled with the mentoring were there's a balance between like being a friend, being a mentor, and you would naturally, I'm quite a friendly person, you'd familiarize yourself so much with them that one of the things that was quite challenging is they would get used to you being at the end of the phone all the time. And we were there because the clinic got so busy that if they, the consults were busying up and it was operations, they'd like, oh, can you come in? But it was starting to get like, well, can you come in because we've got 2 extra consults? And unfortunately, one of the biggest aspects of our job is having to prioritize, and got something on the table and then something else coming in. You've got to be able to figure out in your head what you do and who you see. So I think the hardest thing was being there for them, but then trying to get them to back off a little bit, without being a bit cruel, really.
Exactly.
But otherwise, I didn't really. I enjoyed it. I just think I enjoyed it. I got a lot from them. They made me need to learn because I would forget things or they would correct me. But I think, a challenge was that they become used to you being there, and at some point we're not going to be there for them all the time.
Yeah, and in terms of when you were a young vet, or the young vets you deal with, are there things, not specifically mentoring related, that vets struggle with that they didn't expect, or that you struggled with when you started as a new vet? Unexpected stresses, I suppose.
I didn't realize how tired I was going to be. I mean, yeah.
It's a very good point. It's a very good point, isn't it?
I honestly remember my first week at work.
Yeah.
And on one of the days, I was having to fill in an EpiPen monitoring form. Yeah. I remember thinking, I don't even know what these words are saying, and it was so difficult. I remember going to bed at like 7 o'clock every night. So I think the stresses when I first started were trying to not being able to manage my own expectations. I was trying to do so much, and I was getting irritated at myself for what I felt like I was failing at, and I wasn't giving myself enough time. Yeah, I was knackered. I wanted to put myself. I remember staying late to take a canine out of Greyhound, and in hindsight, I just think, please don't do that. Go home. So, like, I think my biggest stresses was I was probably putting it on myself. That I wanted to achieve as much as I could achieve as quick as I could achieve, and actually, probably by doing that, I was going backward steps because I was becoming more tired and probably getting a bit irritable.
You wonder if that's a personality trait of people who are most likely to apply for or get into the whole veterinary program. You have a bunch of people who are used to achieving, and then you put them in a situation where they're not just going to be perfect from the start, and it drives you absolutely nuts. And your employer and your colleagues are not expecting half of what you're expecting of yourself.
Exactly.
They expect that you're going to struggle and be slow and stuff, and you're the only one who
Yeah,
is that tough on yourself.
and I mean that's it. I mean, I know that when I've got students, I know that they're going to be slow. But
Yep.
again, when I was there, I guess the stress on the flip. Unfortunately, there were bad sides of my first job, but it was you were. I put myself forward to be in one of their busiest clinics, that was me again, wanting to achieve loads, but then you do get the pressures on you in certain places with certain people in certain practices that are very busy to be quick, to be fast, to do your dentals really quickly. And that is really stressful that you are, I don't think there are vets that, you know, have the newer ones and they don't know how to be leaders. And that was stressful because you're kind of, and we call it digging out blind. You kind of just have to sink or swim. You your own thing. And I was lucky to begin with, and then maybe not as lucky that I didn't have someone there to help me and guide me. And that was stressful, you know, putting yourself forward for operations where you didn't have someone to physically watch you do it. And hard.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was hard.
That's Hey, Gerardo, go.
Oh, I was going to ask you a question there. You said managing your own expectations. That's a tricky one, because I've often thought, how can we, like, it's the drive and the high expectations of veterinarians themselves which pushes them towards getting better, wanting to do better, and you know, continuing professional development. There's a heap of continuing professional development that we have to go through, right?
Yeah.
At what stage, at what point did you get to where you went, actually, you know, I do have too high expectations of myself, or I am okay with what I know, because I also then am aware that it's impossible to know everything. So the fear of the unknown is not as bad, because you've accepted that you just don't know or can't know everything. What stage did you get to when you were, you know, you felt comfortable with that?
I would genuinely only say this has happened to me recently, and I'm just short of 6 years in. Like, it's not because I only completed my extra medicine qualification in April, and then I knew that my focus was more on that. And when you figure out, maybe if you do figure out that you prefer one aspect of veterinary medicine, because there's a bazillion, then naturally you will let the side down a little bit on something else. But I accept that. And I accepted that probably, I'd probably say mainly in the last 6 months, but also when I started locuming, I knew that I was good enough to locum, but I was never going to be someone that could go in and, you know, do like a fracture repair on a hip or something. Like, you accept it. But I think as you get more confidence in your own skills, which comes with time, you get confident in thinking, well, I don't know that, but I'll either find it out, or there'll be someone else in this industry or in my practice that is good at that, so I'm going to go and talk to them. And I think that just comes with growing up and maturing into being a vet. And just, I think I'd say when I was revising for my certificate, I remember thinking, well, I'm not going to know all of this, so I might as well just try and figure out what, you know, I will remember and use that, and I'll let other vets and other colleagues help me if there are things that I'm, you know, feel weaker at, and I'm fine with that.
It's a good question. How do you get that into, how do you instill that concept into new grads? If you think about it, it's almost like your university. And I don't know if I'm actually asking you. I'm just musing on that point. Your course and your university creates the impression that they want you to know everything. So when you get out of uni, you go, shit, I'm supposed to know everything. And then it takes you a while to go to reach that point where you go, well, you know, I'll never ever know everything, and I just need to accept my limitations and continuously improve. But it is a.
I say to my like the vet students that come in, or the newly qualified, I'll say, you'll never know more than what you do now, because their brains are so full of everything. And you know, I tell them that as soon as you start, within 6 months, you'll have lost some of the itty bitty knowledge, but you have so much more wider knowledge of cases and interpreting things, and sometimes the nitty gritty things actually don't always matter, unless you really do need to, you know, figure out the, I don't know, pharmacokinetics of certain drugs because of X, Y, and Z. But my vet school, and I don't know how it works. We had something called day one competencies that we had to have before we qualified. Did you guys have the same? Yeah.
I didn't, but I've actually seen your list
Have you seen it? Yeah.
through researching for this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a day one competencies and a year one competencies. Although most people will never look at their year ones because within year one they'll have got them anyway, no doubt. But when I was doing my finals, and I was on rotations, you just have a list of all the skills that you should have to be your first year in to start practice, and you'd have got examined on those in your final year. So I was equipped for day one, but I wasn't equipped for the rest of being a vet. Yeah. And I don't think it's taught. They don't really teach you in school of what to expect, really, do they?
Yeah. Which is why we're launching this podcast.
Just going back over something you said about focus, and how it relates to your own expectations. I've recently heard of this concept of being a specialist, not a generalist. So when you're saying being specialist, not necessarily referring to actually being a surgical specialist or something, but you should have your particular area of focus rather than actually have just the desire to know everything. Like, I want to read a little bit about behavior today. I'm going to read a little bit about this today. And what happens is you kind of dibble dabby, get overwhelmed because you never know enough of something to feel comfortable with it. So having your particular area of focus for my particular area of focus is going to be endocrine. I'm going to read about diabetes, the management of diabetes in cats and dogs, and I'm going to read up on hypoadrenocorticism and and thyroid disease, because of the four main things that happen, right? And then you walk away with an increased level of not just knowledge but also confidence, because you focus in that one area. So Hubert, you go.
No, I was going to say I totally agree. I've come to the same realization that that's a great pathway to take, is to pick something and say, I'm going to get really good at this, and even ask your colleagues to say, if you have send me your skin cases, because I'm going to be the practice dermatologist, and do that. And then when you get bored of that, whether it's after a month or after 6 months, and then set yourself a new challenge and go, okay, what's next? What's my next specialty, as you say? It does. Knowing a lot about one thing actually does breed a lot of confidence. It makes you feel more valued in your practice. It makes you proud of what you can achieve. And then, I think it's a great approach.
Yeah, I think I agree. And I think I've just noticed that more and more people, like, I get a lot of messages. So I love veterinary. I'm more than happy. I've come to terms with the fact that I love being a general practitioner, although I don't do like the orthopedic side. I am more of they call me the pill popper. So I'm the medicine. I treat the things. So I have come to terms with being my general practitioner, but my area of focus is medicine. And I love that I can bring that. And I love when you work in a big multidisciplinary team that they can be like, oh, just go and run that past Lou, or I'll go and run that past somebody else. And it's great, but it's not that's my main area, but I will still try and focus on, I'm going to do a bit of neurology today, and I'm going to still work up that case. But I think absolutely the fact that as soon as I got my certificate, people love it. People just absolutely love it. And it makes me more employable in the future as well. So I think it does give you this confidence that you have achieved something extra, which is nice.
Yeah. Gerardo?
I was just listening. Like, and you're talking about competencies before, and I think that's a great thing, actually. And we've just sort of rolled out that sort of concept with our own sort of training programs. What would we like these people to, what would we like our vets to be able to achieve in 3 months, and then 6 months, and a year. But I suppose that you mentioned working in a multidisciplinary hospital, and maybe one of the key things there is and it all comes back to managing expectations and having your particular area of focus and things. But would it be the idea that you're comfortable with what you know, but it's the lack of comparison? So being you go through uni and you can't help but ask the student next to you or your friend, what did you get in that result? And they go, oh, should I ace that assignment? I got 90%. And you're like, holy shit, I worked 3 times as long and I just passed that.
Yeah.
And I feel and I hear all the time the comparison with others as opposed to a comparison within yourself.
Yeah.
Like if you set yourself something that you want to achieve and that's your objective for yourself, and the marker for yourself is you and your own improvement, as opposed to the marker being an external source, such as a colleague, such as a friend. Because like for me, I used to think that not being able to do orthopedics, I wasn't a vet. Like I can do orthopedics, I can chop off a leg, somewhat that's orthopedics, right? But I can't do cruciates. I've never done a fracture repair. I've done a fracture removal. But
I take legs off, have a look at my cat, Oreo.
That's right. Yeah, but maybe it's something you said there which kind of triggered the thought that it's a comparison within yourself, and that should be where you should look for internal motivation, where you should actually kind of self-assess yourself based on your improvements within you, as opposed to looking at other people and comparing to them.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think one, again, and it goes back to, because I get so many messages and I get quite a lot of worrying like messages or people upset because they're comparing themselves to other people. Like, Jesus, I went to vet school, I failed an animal health and welfare exam, for Christ's sake. Who failed animal health and welfare? What the hell?
I found that hard at uni.
I'm not being asked about how many teeth a frog has.
How many one frog has?
Frog has? I didn't even know frogs have teeth. Probably did it. But I do think this is a major thing because naturally we are competitive people.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to look at other vets and think, oh, and I think this is one thing with the newer ones. They'll panic at what their colleagues say they do, even though it's a lot of bollocks. They've not done it. They've done 6 boosters. They've not done a bitch spay. Like, I think there is this idea that we have to be better than each other when actually, yeah, absolutely. I used to think, oh no, like my friends doing orthopedics, they get to play with drills. Like, oh my God, I literally give like injections and I'm not as good. Yeah, again, that comes with time. For me, it came with time. Like I realized, well, I might be a bit more confident or, seemingly better in one area than you are, but you're better and seemingly more confident in your area, and together this is great. But I think there are a lot of new grads, and it happened to me that recently qualified, where you have this competitiveness with your colleagues, whereas actually you should be competitive with yourself. You should think, well, okay, I'm going to get better at this, and I'm going to get better at this.
Yeah, I definitely think it's something to be wary of as new grads, because it's important to have a support network. But I think and I've seen this with several young vets, including my wife, and she just qualified, she's a vet as well. So you have the support network of friends from uni, which is great, and they have their little WhatsApp chat group or something like that. But then, as you say, there's an underlying tone of competitiveness. So they'll chat on there and you want to offload, but then she'll read it and go, what? She struggled with this surgery. I haven't even tried that. And there's definitely a risk of, I think it's important to carefully select your support group or be very wary of your support group turning into a competitive environment.
That's it. I think that's it, and you need to be able to support each other, but also not brag, not boast, because a lot of it's, like I said, it's probably bullshit anyway. Let's be honest. Like, we all did it. Like, yeah, I did this today. You didn't. And just being, not trying to run before you can walk. It's just, don't worry about what other people are getting up to or whatever. Like, it's not going to change the type of vet that you are if you do it at a different pace to them, or whether you do it at all. And I think that's one thing that I try and teach the students that we have, that not to worry about the exam marks of other people or whether they're doing this and you're not. It's totally irrelevant. Totally irrelevant.
Alrighty. So I'm going to change tack a little bit, if that's all right. We're talking about students. I think lots of the listeners looking at specifically Gerardo and your followers and fans are probably students, and they've all just finished exams or just kicking back in holidays. So I want to take you back to your student days, as in part just again to get back to getting to know Louisa a little bit better. Please tell us about your one exam story. I just remembered mentioning exams. You said something about a shopping list or something.
Oh, oh God. This is awful. I still get like palpitations over this. So, honestly, it was. I'm trying to think. It must have been one of the end of the exams, and everyone's like really sad and deflated and underwhelmed by life at the. And it was veterinary public health, which you're going to work in an abattoir. It just. I actually think as well, I was going through a breakup. This adds to the story. I feel like I was going through a breakup and I was an emotional. Anyway, I still do. I've got writing on my hands now, writing on this. I write notes sometimes on my hands. And I remember this particular lady who worked on reception at university. She came round and she looked at my hand. And I thought, what's she looking at there? She came over and specifically looked at my hand. And then I turned behind me and she was speaking on the phone. She picked up the phone from, we were doing it in the dissection lab, and she'd phoned up. And at the end of the exam to me, when everyone else was leaving, and asked me to come into this separate room, and she was like, I'm sorry, I think we're going to have to disqualify you. And I was just like, I'll stop you there. What is going on? And they had to get the dean of the university, who's absolutely hilarious and he's fantastic. Gary, he's called Gary England. He came and looked at my hand. It had to be photographed before he got there. And he came and looked at my hand and he was like, no. And it literally had like, I think it had like cornflakes on it. There was absolutely nothing on it. And they were making me feel like I failed. And then I had to walk home because I didn't have a list to get home. And it was so a note to myself: do not write on your hand around exams, and also wash your hands more.
Wash your hands more is 101 in terms of reducing infection spread in hospitals.
Yeah. That is it. Yes, wash your hands more.
Yeah, so unless you were very clever and had a very ingenious code so cornflakes is code for
exactly.
So Louisa, speaking about student days and exams and that, have you got any tips or advice if you deal with students these days that you could give to any potential student listeners out there, just regarding exams and keeping a level head?
So I think one thing that I realized about exams, and you have to come to terms with it, is you kind of go from we are naturally perfectionists and we want to achieve the best, and I think you have to accept that you just need to pass. It doesn't matter whether you get top marks. You know, a pass is a pass is a pass.
Yep.
It's not going to change you becoming a vet. It's not, your grades don't determine the type of vet that you're going to be. You know, like I used to say to people, you know, I had friends that, well, maybe not friends, that they would achieve so much in exams, but they wouldn't have been the type of vet that I was. They wouldn't, so I knew that to me, I was okay with, and I think you just have to be okay with doing what you can, the best you can do. And my dad always just said to me, doesn't matter what happens as long as you try your best. And grades, I think everyone panics about what grades they get. And in the grand scheme of things, no one's going to ask you what you got. Nobody cares.
Nobody cares. Gerardo, you guys are big employers. How much do you care about somebody's grades at university when you're looking for a vet to work for you?
There's a couple of things I look for. One is their employment history, unless they're a locum. But if they're not a locum and they've locumed a lot, then that's concerning, because it's pretty unlikely that 12 practices are going to have an issue with that. It's pretty unlikely that 12 practices are going to have issues, as opposed to that one person having issues which affected 12 practices. So I think that's a concern for me, is the number of places they've employed at, unless they're a locum.
Yep.
But I don't think I've actually looked at someone's resume.
No.
I'll look at a cover letter, but the resume I'll leave.
Yep.
Because when I walk in there, it's really about connecting with them and how they are.
Yeah, exactly.
And their self-awareness. Self-awareness is a big one for me. So I haven't looked at someone's GPA for like the last 3-4 years in terms of
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the message to the students out there is, in the real world, nobody gives a crap about how well you did in your exams.
I mean, we know that you have to pass. I mean, I don't know how other universities work, but with ours, you couldn't progress into the next year until you passed.
Yeah.
You were only allowed one. That was stressful, but you just have to pass, and you can pass. You've got into vet school. That's the hardest bit. You just got to pass.
Yep.
And just be organised, be structured. Try not to be hungover all the time, and just use your common sense. Just you'll pass.
Absolutely, exactly. Now your bio. I'm veering off track a little bit here, but I was just interested in it. You said that you did some volunteering as part of your course in Thailand and India and Namibia. That's fascinating. That's if you could talk about that. Did you have a favorite out of those places? And did you learn much from that? What?
Yeah, so I did. So they were all, I mean, probably the same with everybody, but we had to do like 56 weeks extramural studies. You have a set amount of different farms and pig farms, but you have however many weeks of what you can do as yourself. And I wanted to experience, being abroad and in different cultures and things. So my favorite was working in India at the Tree of Life for Animals. I definitely recommend, depending on where all the listeners are from, in India. It's fantastic, humbling, just amazing, the things that they can do. And that was, I think I did remember, in a small, I wouldn't even call it it's just a rundown building where they just rescue all of these dogs. And you see, a lot of people will never ever see distemper, which obviously we don't. And every other dog had distemper. You'll see rabies, you'll see wounds and fractures that you'll manage wounds, you'll operate. It just amazing, and it makes you realize how lucky you are and how much more we can do for our animals. But one thing I did learn is animals are like, they would use the same surgical equipment time and time again, and none of these animals would get sick. God knows how.
Yeah.
But that was my favorite, and it was just really humbling seeing these animals. But
so Tree of Life, is it a charity or
the Tree of Life for Animals? It's an animal charity, yeah.
Okay.
It's run by a lady, I forget her name, but I think she must have gone on holiday and didn't want to leave because she saw these street dogs that they had no. And yeah, she set up the Tree of Life for Animals, and they are also on Instagram, they're on Facebook, and I follow them and keep in touch with them. They're for experience, you'll do a lot of neutering, but wounds and you'll see a lot of amputations because they don't have the facilities to x-ray and things. But yeah, it's really great, and a lot of mange.
Yeah.
You'll never see mange like you do in these yeah, great one, that one.
I think it's a valuable exercise to step out of your first world ivory tower work-wise once in a while and see, as you say, see what things can be like. It gives you a lovely perspective on how fortunate we are and how fortunate our patients are even.
Oh, God. And absolutely, you have to learn to improvise, on your feet, to use what you've got, and it's hard a little because you come home and you think, oh my God, at least you can humanely give or put animals to sleep in a humane way, or you can give pain relief that they just don't have there. So I would definitely recommend that. And I went to a place called Nankasay in the Yeah, I think I was like a mini vet then. I think it was second year.
Yeah.
That was great. That was working in an animal sanctuary, and that was a lot of husbandry related things. So working with the baboons and the cheetah conservation, which was great.
Yeah.
We also worked with the Bushmen children, which was lovely. So that was not necessarily vetty. It was just a bit of character building, seeing different cultures. That was really, really lovely. And then I worked in Chiang Mai. I went to an elephant sanctuary, which very sad, but it was great because it was trying to build awareness about using the elephants for things that they shouldn't have. And the place where I worked is I don't know whether you follow. There's another vet. I think it's there's a traveling vet or a traveling doctor or something. Yeah. She's actually there. She's working. It's called Friends of the Asian Elephant, FAE. And it was absolutely fantastic. It's where they started doing prosthesis on the elephants who'd had their limbs blown off.
Oh, wow.
I think they said it was on the Burma border. So that was amazing. And like all these, vets and doctors were coming together to do it, which was fantastic. But they made I think they call them mahouts, who own in sort of inverted commas, these elephants that were mistreating them.
Yeah.
They make stay in this rehab place to learn how to look after them. So that was also great, but obviously not necessarily specific skills I could take home, or like I'm not going to be treating elephants. But again, it's comparative. You learn different things and different cultures and different ways of treating things, and it's great.
Wow. Spectacular.
Yeah, it's actually one thing that I haven't done yet is actually traveled. We're talking a bit before about going through university and focusing on marks and things. And when I was in high school, I didn't do particularly well at high school. And then it was through actually wanting to do more with my kind of life after I graduated from high school, because I didn't actually have a career path at all, that I then found sort of science, and science was my entry point into veterinary science. Like I loved anatomy, physiology, and biology, and then that's where sort of I found my focus, my field of focus, and that's where I kind of excelled. But it was talking about the journey. Like it sounds like as if you filled your career, Louisa, with sort of a philosophy of sort of the journey. And for me, it was always the marks and being the best I could based in comparison to marks and things, and to others and how they went. So I went through uni comparing myself a lot to my fellow colleagues. And I had a really good friend, and he was straight sevens, not just incredibly smart, and incredibly focused. And I tried really hard to sort of emulate what he did, and it put quite a lot of pressure on myself. And when I reflect back and listening to what you were saying there about where you went and what you did and things you discussed about sort of your philosophy and thoughts around marks and uni, it sounded like as if you really did focus on the journey. It's like not just the destination, but the journey that actually you've gone through.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was just I was eating a mince pie for Christmas.
That's a weird thing. The British obsession with the mince pie. It's not even mince; it's a fruit pie. I never got that.
That's actually really true.
But no, it really was. Can you still hear?
Yep.
Internet. Oh, that's fine. Yeah, I think I'm not really a traveller, but I knew that I wanted to experience things because I think it's important to you appreciate what you have over here and where you're going to work. And I really, I went from being, you're almost like a big fish in a little pond when you're at college and you know that you're achieving quite well, to actually being a really tiny, small, insignificant fish that's just about scraping the barrel.
Yeah, it's a matter of perspective, isn't it?
Absolutely. No means try and reinforce this. I was not a top achiever at vet school. I wasn't. I was getting 51%, 52%. I failed. I had to resit. It's just, it doesn't determine who you are, or some people might be better at one exam than the other. It's not about that. And I think your exams aren't who you are. It's just, you've got to make time for other things as well that will shape you as a vet. And to me, that was having different experiences, such as going on these placements. And I would love to go back to Tolfa. I would definitely recommend anyone to go there.
Yeah, I'm with Gerardo. I've never done the charity work thing, and it is something that I feel like I'd love to do. It's a question. It's a question of when. Where I think when you have the time, specifically again young vets, I think lots of young vets can be very, very driven and in a hurry to build their career. And actually, when you have that time and before you have children and that to take those opportunities to go work somewhere else and try something completely different. You've got 40 years to build your career, but those sort of experiences are so valuable.
That's it. And I think we do, I don't know whether you're the same, but we get a lot of students that we try and encourage it anyway, but it depends on what they can afford to go to, like neutering clinics and things, but often they go somewhere abroad on a nice cozy beach, which I think is great to begin with, because let's be honest, I always say to people, if you can do a bitch spay, you can pretty much conquer anything.
Yeah.
So,
especially a fat Labrador bitch spay where you put your hands in there it's like someone just poured oil into your surgery site.
Yeah, or a really skinny whippet cross, some deep-chested breed, which happened to me the other day, and it was the first time I had to have a senior vet scrub in with me. So that shows we're not invincible.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I totally agree with the spay thing. I just do emergency stuff, so I haven't done spays for about 5 years, and I don't regret it at all. Give me any emergency surgery, X-lap, fine. Yeah. Give me a fat Labrador spay, you'll see me around a mile.
How did you want to continue on here, Hubert? Like the internet connection's slowly dropping out. And
yeah, we do have the odd little issue. Do you reckon it's good enough for us to carry on?
I think we covered some amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Louisa, you've really shared with us quite a lot. Like, I suppose there's one other thing, or the one other question I'll ask you before we wrap up. But we talked about desire for improvement. We talked about mentorship. We talked about mindsets. We talked about the benefits of managing your expectations and focuses, comparing yourself to others. Like, there's a shit ton of like amazing content there that I think that would probably be, that almost could be this could be a 2-part one on something. Yeah. But I think if we continue to talk, we could talk forever by the sounds of things. But maybe this might be a good time to sort of wrap up with a couple of short questions.
Yes. Okay, I was going to say, don't deny me the opportunity to ask the short questions. Come on.
Yeah. So maybe I'll ask one question, and then Hubert can wrap up with some short questions, and then that's a really good one. Okay. So.
Oh God, am I supposed to be nervous? Are you going to ask me some ridiculous questions?
No.
No, I don't think so. No, we've been pretty nice so far. No. So okay. So you mentioned something at the start of the actual podcast, and you said a phrase which was, veterinary science or your job is fun if you make it. Like that's something that resonates with me, and I totally believe that the situation, you have an impact and control over the situation you're in the vast majority of the times. Stressful situations can be seen as challenges that need to be overcome. And, you can definitely make situations more fun. Like, what kind of things do you do to make situations fun for you?
I think, by my nature and character, I'm slightly ridiculous. So I try and lighten up whoever I'm working with. Do you mean specific at work, making things fun, or trying to get the most out of work? Yeah. I think I don't take things too seriously. So, we'll do silly little things, like you put silly dressings on animals, or you talk in a stupid voice. I don't know why it happens. It just comes out.
Yeah. Come on, give us an example of a stupid voice.
Honestly, I can't. Like, even my mom, and I'm just shy of 30. My mum was like, Louisa, this is ridiculous. Stop. I don't know. I think you've just gotta like. I mean, some practices don't, but we'll have music on. Like today, we had Christmas songs on whilst taking 20 teeth out of a Labrador, including all carnassials. I'm just gonna put it out there. And I don't know. I just think when I consult, I can be formal and sort of serious when I want to be, but I'm quite a personable person, so I make consultations a bit more relaxed, and I'll try and get the clients on my wavelength a little bit, and I'll make jokes or be silly, and they probably think I'm absolutely bizarre, but I try and be a bit more relaxed about things, and then I'll go into serious vet mode if I need to. But I think it's just so important to not, you just got to lighten up.
Yeah.
You know, if you think how many funny things happen in a day at veterinary as a veterinary surgeon, they are comedy a lot of the times, like the sounds, what people say, watching nurses have tantrums, you know, untangling all the ECG wires. You know, you've got.
Oh, are you there?
Oh, I'm back.
Yes, you're back. Yeah, we lost you.
She took another bite of a mince pie.
Yeah, okay.
No, I didn't, honestly. No, it sat here peaceful in its little house or whatever you call it. The little
so you said untangling ECG leads, and then after that?
We lost you there.
Yeah. So I just think, you know, that every day there will be something funny that happens, but you just have to lighten up at work. That's what I think. You know, it's not, you know, make your consultations a bit more comedy. You know, well, I do, and clients won't think you're a lunatic. Feel more relaxed about it.
No, I agree with you. It's a unique profession. There's definitely moments of potentially of chaos and stress when I look around the clinic and I go, geez, imagine you sitting at a desk all day reading reports. You're not going to have this sort of fun in many other jobs, or let's say this level of crazy, and how you interpret it is up to you. But
I think it's just, but like, what other jobs do you get from going to, like, you like more happy coming to work Christmas, then it was an RTA dog, then it was doing consults and having really just normal boosters and normal chats, then it was a cat in respiratory distress, and then it was having a mindfulness meeting. I mean, everything.
Yeah, absolutely. It's many things, but it's not boring.
It definitely, if anyone says their day is boring, please change jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, should we move to the last few little quick questions? Well, we'll start with a simple one. Have you got any favorite books that you recommend to people? It doesn't have to be vet related.
I've just well, I really loved Tattoo. I don't know whether Tattoos of Auschwitz. Really great, really quick read. Cried. I've not cried at any books.
Okay, all right.
I love the Henry Marsh book. So he is a neurosurgeon.
Yeah.
And he has written some amazing books. One was called Do No Harm, and he chapters certain neurology disorders and the cases around it, but it also has his successes and his failure, or what he deems as his failures. And it's I think I read it in 24 hours. It's brilliant. So Henry Marsh, Do No Harm.
Yeah.
And then his second one, which is Admissions, A Life in Brain Surgery, which is good. See, and that, you know, I'm not a neurologist by any means, but I just think he writes like how we would, and about his successes, his downfalls, his stresses, his worries, and they're really, really good reads. And I'm sure everybody's read, well, what's that new one? It's This Is Going to Hurt, is it? Have you heard of that one?
No.
Oh, what, you guys? This Is Going to Hurt. It's the secret diaries of a junior doctor. Gave up the profession.
Okay.
He's called Adam Kay, and he now is a comedy writer. It's really hilarious. It's also sad, but then goes through, you know, it's very relatable to us, how stressful it is trying to become, you know, get higher up the ladder. It's also, he works in gynecology, so you can imagine it still hilarious. But it's sad because he talks about people taking him to try and sue him, that he was depressed, and it's I think that's winning awards over here. You guys should get it, or I'll send you a copy.
Okay.
And this is going to hurt. It's fantastic.
Okay.
They're my favorite so far.
I think that I'll add that to the top of my reading list. I'm looking for
Yeah.
something.
I've googled it. It's got 4.8 stars on Waters.
Okay. That's
95% of people on Google like this book.
Okay.
Cool.
You can't argue. All right, and I think then we'll wrap it up with the one last one. Back to new graduates and students. So you are in a lecture hall, and you've got all the new veterinary graduates of the world in one room, and you've got a minute or two to give them one message. What's your message?
Oh my God. I think my message would be, let me think. I think it's just have realistic expectations of what you're going to achieve when you begin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was kind of two things now. And my more advice is just find somewhere where you know that you've got someone to learn from, and be there for you. I genuinely think your first job, that's going to shape who you're going to become. And I think if you work with, and be really nice to your nurses, because if you're best friends with the nurses, you can be pretty much, you can get away with anything.
Yeah.
I know it's not one thing. I think it's really hard one thing. I think there's a few things. I think it's just, don't try and overdo it. You're going to get there. It doesn't matter if you have done 10 bitch spays within the first 2 weeks. Yeah. It's, in the grand scheme of things, it's totally irrelevant. You're just doing things slowly and safely.
Yeah.
Be friends with your nurses, and just choose somewhere where you're gonna have someone to be there for you and support you. That's gonna be the thing that's gonna help you the most.
And realistic expectations. I think
yes, have realistic expectations that please don't try and run before you.
Yeah.
That comes back with that all kind of rolls together, right? If you had, if that one place had incredible support, just not from the veterinary teams, so you had a mentor which helped keep things into perspective, that would then manage your expectations, right? And then if you had a nursing team that was able to support you and keep you in check, because vets, we kind of have big heads and so forth, and nurses keep us in check, then that is like gold. I think a team and supportive environment. Yeah.
Well, that's it. I'm done with you.
Okay.
It's so lovely to meet you, Louisa. Thank you so much for your time again.
Thank you so much. I think it's so fabulous that you can just connect with people all over the world. I just think it's fab. Thank you so much for inviting me.
No, thank you very much for coming along. And for those who don't follow Louisa on Instagram, you can find her on Instagram at Louisa_the_vet. She's got a couple hundred posts there of clinical content, some holiday snaps as well. And just an incredible person to follow, and inspiring and inspirational as well with her Instagram stories. And the books and places that she's been, we'll put in the link, which Hubert will put together. And they'll be in the link, and you can have a look down at the link below for the books and the places where she's been to and suggests to go for crack work. And thank you very much for making the time, and it's been an incredible hour. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, guys. Thank you.
Hi guys, us again. We promised you a bonus section, and here it is. So there's no point in us talking for hours to our guests and then you walking away with no action plan on how to implement what we've just learned. So we've created this postscript, what we call the Go Smash It time. This is where we discuss some points to ponder and some steps to take. So here's what we think you can take from this episode. Take a moment to think back to why you wanted to be a vet. Try to keep this in mind when you have a tough day at work.
Okay, and who do you call when you need help? For help when you've got a tricky case, or just when you need some emotional support? If there's not an easy answer to this, if there's not a name or a friend's name or a colleague's name that pops up in your head, then consider asking somebody to officially be your mentor or join in an official mentoring program so that you have that lifeline.
Pick one specific area that you want to get really good at work. This could be cardiology or eyelid surgery or client communication. So instead of being a generalist and wanting to be good at everything, it's actually better to spend time focusing on one particular area and getting good at that. So be a little specialist in that area. Focus all your extra reading, continuing education on that topic for the next 3 to 6 months, instead of just randomly selecting articles and generalizing things. Enroll in a course or talk on this topic today.
And finally, focus on making your work fun. It can be such a serious workplace environment, and it can just drain the energy out of you. So when you're feeling down, see if you can find an opportunity to add a little bit of silliness to your work environment. Gerardo, have you got any examples or any things that you like to do to keep things light and keep things?
Actually, what we'll do is we'll include a list of things that you can do to create a positive team environment as a worksheet attached to this podcast.
Okay, excellent. Alrighty, that's us. We hope you enjoyed this interview nearly as much as we did. Now, go out there and do what you always wanted to do. Be vets, help animals, you lucky things you. Take care of each other and find someone to take care of you. Keep learning, keep growing, and we'll see you next time.
But before you head off, head to the iTunes store and give us some feedback. We'd love to know how we're doing, and if you loved us, then we'd love a 5-star review. And one last request, if you found value in what we discussed today, then chances are some of your friends and colleagues will too. So please share this podcast with 3 of them. Now, go smash it.